Hello and welcome to Sage and Stone Homestead. If you have not met me yet, my name is Heather and we're going to be making a cheese today that, to be honest, I wish had been the first cheese that I tried. You do not need a cheese cave for this. Arguably, you probably don't even need a cheese press for this, and I think that this is probably my family's favorite cheese that I've made. They like it because it's mild, it's milky, it's soft, it slices well, it grates well, it melts moderately well, but overall it's a really great fresh eating cheese that doesn't take very much time as far as hard cheeses go. We're gonna make this today and we could eat it today. It gets a little bit better if you let it sit for a day or two, but that's it. That's all the aging that you need, and you don't need a cheese fridge. You can just stick it in your regular refrigerator, which is great. Also, this is something that you can use old milk for. So if you're not familiar with our farm, I have a lot of dairy goats. They gave birth in February and I was really busy. I'm filming this in March and I have a lot of milk over here that is about a month old. I'm filming this on March 14th, right? 15th. Today's the 15th. And this milk is from the 17th of February, and it does have a little bit of frozen cream at the top. It has soured a little bit. I will say you don't want to use like old store-bought milk, but old raw milk will culture instead of go bad, as long as the milking process was clean and the vessels that you store the milk in are clean and your fridge is at the correct temperature. What it's going to do is essentially turn into a soured product, which that souring comes from the milk culturing. The good bacteria in the milk get to work breaking down the sugars in the milk and they will multiply. So I don't even need a freeze-dried culture or any other culture for this. The milk is already starting out cultured, so it's really great. The end product that we're going to get doesn't come out sour, at least not to me. My son said that it tasted a little bit like pickles. I don't really know where he got that. The majority of the family said that it tastes like mozzarella. The frozen cream is giving me problems. I don't want to make a mess this early in the video. My milk fridge stays at about 34, between 34 and 36. So any milk stored at the back of it does tend to freeze, which is fine. I have made milk from, or cheese from frozen milk before, so if that's a question you have, my answer is yes, it works with frozen milk. I am going to be making a 4.5 gallon batch today. You could do as small or as large of a batch as you like, whatever fits in your pot. Now, this may not come up on camera super well, but what I'm working with today is raw goat's milk. You could use raw cow's milk if that's what you have, but goat's milk doesn't readily separate into the cream and milk unless you let it sit for a bit, usually a couple weeks, and you can start to see this cream line. If you wanted to, you could take a ladle and skim off this cream and freeze it until you have enough to make butter. And then you could use the rest of the milk to make a cheese. I will say, if you take a lot of the fat, which is in the cream, out of the cheese, your cheese is going to be a little bit drier and a little bit more crumbly, a little bit closer to like a Parmesan type of a bite to it. And so if that's what you're looking for, great, you can get two things done with one batch of milk. I'm gonna leave all the cream in this today. I like to make as big of a cheese as I can because really, if you make a smaller batch, it takes the same amount of time. So if I can save up milk till I can make a real big one, I get more cheese for the same amount of work for the same length of time. Alright, so all the milk is in the pot. I'm going to put this on high. Be aware that if you are using cow's milk has more sugar in it and you are more likely to burn your milk, and you may want to heat it up at like a medium high. Just watch it. You don't want it to scald on the bottom. I have a very thick bottomed pot here. And again, I'm working with goat's milk, and in my experience, goat's milk is a lot less fussy and a lot less likely to stick. But you still want to keep things moving. You don't have to sit here constantly. Just, make sure that you are getting the milk moving every couple of minutes. I'm not heating this up to pasteurize it. I'm actually only bringing this up to 90 degrees. Remember, we want to take advantage of the cultures in the milk to culture our cheese. Okay, now that we are at 90 degrees, what I'm going to do is actually take the milk off of the heat. There will be some residual heat on the burner, and I don't really want it to get any warmer because I do want the milk to culture at this point. So as I said, I'm using older milk, and that's essentially the culture that I'm using. But let's say you're using milk from the store or you're using fresher milk and you want to add a culture, use a mesophilic culture at this point. The recipe that I am using is from Jennifer Murch, Milk Slinger, here on YouTube. She used Flora Danica. Basically, you want to use a culture that is going to multiply at lower temperatures, which mesophilic cultures will. You're gonna see on here that there's a little bit of speckling on my milk. This is actually little oil globules from my frozen cream. This is nothing to worry about. It's at this point where if you're going to add culture, you'd want to add it, and we are adding the rennet at the same time. With a lot of cheeses, you just add the culture and you allow that to ripen before you add the rennet. This is not the case with this type of cheese. You add both the rennet and the culture at the same time. The rennet that I have is what I can get locally. I do believe it is an animal rennet. It doesn't say. It just says double strength microbial coagulants. This is a microbial rennet. You could use animal rennet, you could use vegetable rennet. I have heard that vegetable rennet maybe is a little less potent, so if you have that, you may want to add just a little bit more, but try it and see. We're going to put about half a teaspoon in here. I might do a little bit more since the half teaspoon is for 4 gallons of milk and I have 4.5. In order to add the rennet to the milk, we do want to dilute the rennet in a little bit of water. It's just going to help distribute things a little bit better. So got our rennet in our water, give it a stir. And again, to help with distribution, I'm going to sprinkle the rennet water mixture over the milk like this and mix it in. This is going to start to coagulate relatively quickly. You want to mix your rennet in about 30 seconds to a minute. I think there are recipes out there that use different coagulants to make this type of cheese. I've not used them before. I've just used the rennet. All right, now that I've got everything mixed in, I'm just going to still the milk and let this sit for around 25 minutes, and then we'll check to see if we have a set curd. All right, so it's been 25 minutes since we set the rennet in, and what I'm going to do to check and see if we have a good enough set is I'm going to split the curd just a little and then lift up. And that looks pretty good. I'm getting a nice clean divide with some nice clear way coming in the middle of the divide. So now I'm ready to cut the curd. A lot of cheese making recipes want you to cut the curd at about a ½ inch or so cubes if you can. And you need something called a cheese knife or something similar in order to achieve that, especially when you have a deeper pot like this. This cheese is a little bit different. You can use a larger whisk because the curds can be cut a lot smaller. So what I'm going to do is actually take my whisk and plunge it down to the bottom, all around this curd mass. You can see I'm getting curds about the size of what you'd see in cottage cheese. That's great. I'm going to take this whisk and swirl it around just a little to help break up anything a little bit bigger. Yeah, so you've got a big one there. Just squish it up against the side of the pot and take care of that. Got to be careful because my pot's pretty full. Now that the curd is relatively uniformly cut, we're going to let the curds heal. And in order to let them heal, we just leave them in the pot in the whey for about 5 minutes. It's going to create a little skin around the outside of each curd, and then we will cook them down just a little bit. If we went ahead and really agitated these and started cooking them down now, too much of like the really creamy goodness would come out of the curd and our cheese would be a little bit tougher. So this is worth waiting at this point. Because I like to stir the curds with my hand and arm, I'm going to give my hand and arm a very thorough washing. I do a lot of things with my hands, especially this time of year, touching goats, digging in the garden, petting the cat, petting the dog, and I don't want any of that residual to end up in my cheese. Bad things can happen. You can stir with like a ladle or something. There's something that I really enjoy about stirring with my hands. I feel like I can feel how the curds are cooking down and I can get a better sense of, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but I can tell better what's going on when I stir with my hands, but feel free to do what you're comfortable with. give my arm a good wash, and then I take some vinegar and rinse my arm with it. If I've got any scratches on my arms from the cats or the bunnies or anything else, I'm gonna know it. But that is okay. There we go, good and clean. Sometimes while your curd set and allowed the rennet to set, you could lose a couple degrees in your pot. That's fine, don't worry about it. I happen to keep a 90-degree temp. But either way, if you lost a couple degrees or if you didn't, we are going to now heat the curd back up to about 95 degrees, stirring the whole time, either with a utensil or an impeccably clean hand. And this whole time, I am going to be kind of just keeping the curds separate, allowing them to cook and not really mat together. And then any larger curds that I come across, I'm going to break them up into that smaller size. This is not a time where I will crank the heat up to high on my burner. I've got it about midway because we should be taking that full 20 minutes to heat up 5 degrees in my case. So I'm gonna set my timer. Figuring out how long it's gonna take your cheese pot to heat up, however many degrees, is something that's gonna take practice. For me, I can turn my stove on medium with a cheese about this size, and that works out about right, but you're gonna have to just test things with your stove. A lot of cheese making is very, very forgiving, and so if it's gonna take you a little bit less time, it's probably fine. If it's gonna take you a little bit more time, it's probably fine. You can just adjust things to your liking. I mean, for all you know, if it takes you a little bit longer, you may prefer your cheese the way that it comes out, and you're gonna make a mess. I make messes all the time. Try not to worry about that either. See, I've got a little bit of a larger curd here. Just gonna break that up so that everything is cooking as evenly as it can. Oh, that's a big one. It's kind of amazing how many I can miss with the whisk, even though I'm trying real hard. Look at that. That's fine. I will squish them up. This is one of the reasons that I like to stir with my hand. Oh goodness, because I can really feel those larger curds in there and get them broken up. As kind of a proof that a lot of cheese making is very forgiving, there was one time where I was making a cheese. I can't remember what type it was. It was probably a Colby. And my kids came in one time and told me, "Hey mommy, there's a swarm of bees outside." And they know that I would like to catch it. And so I can't exactly remember what point I was in the process. It might have been at the stage where the cheese was ripening with the rennet and the culture, and I just left it. I mean, it was probably 2 hours. It was sitting like that, and what I did was just, you know, collect the bees, did what I needed to do, and then came in and resumed cheese making, and I marked that cheese, the swarm cheese, and that was one of the best cheeses that I've ever made. So you may find that you like to adapt your cheeses based on the things that happen. I feel like that's how a lot of good recipes come up. Just things that happen and people discover really cool things. So I've only been stirring for 5 minutes and I've increased by 3 degrees. I'm going to turn this down a little just so we can make sure the curds get to cook for the adequate amount of time, or at least get close to it. I'm making sure to kind of scrape the bottom of the pan so that nothing sticks, scalds, or burns. And I can feel as I'm working that the curds are getting a little less squishy and a little bit more springy. It means they're cooking. Maybe I could have done with a little less milk. I've already hit 95. So what I'm gonna do now that I'm at 95 is I'm still gonna stir this and let these cook for the next 13 minutes, but I'm gonna shut the heat off. Okay, I do still have 5 minutes left on my timer, but I feel like these curds are nice and cooked. And this is something that you're gonna have to just learn as you experience cheese. But kind of as a rule of thumb is if you pull up your curd and you give it a squeeze and it kind of holds together, but you can still kind of easily break it apart like that, this is done. It's one of those things that you learn the feel for over time, but these curds feel really good. So what I'm going to do now is just let this set for another 5 minutes. This is going to allow all the curds to sink, and so when we go to pour off the whey, we're not pouring curd out. And maybe I can also wipe down my stovetop. recipe says to pour off half of the whey. This is a 2-gallon milk can right here, and I just filled it up. And this is what the whey looks like in here. I am gonna pour off more. And don't hate me, but I'm gonna pour the rest of it down the sink. I'll be able to give this 2 gallons of whey to my animals. That is plenty. It is not a problem to sometimes put your whey down the sink, because sometimes life is too busy to worry about the billion things that you could do with the whey. There's always next time when you have more brain power. Ugh. Can you pour it on the compost? Yes. Right now we're getting 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts, so I'm not going outside. All right, so this is what I've got. We've got our big mass of curds down there with some whey. It is at this point that we salt the cheese. The recipe says to do 4 tablespoons, which is a 1/4 cup. I'm gonna put a little bit more in, partially because I'm using 4.5 gallons of milk, but also because my cheese yields have been like bigger than average, and so I've got a little bit more curd than average, and I want to be able to salt them adequately. So I'll put about 5 tablespoons in here. Don't worry, this doesn't all absorb into the curd. Some of it will come out in the whey. This will just make sure it's all adequately salted. Cheese takes a surprising amount of salt to really taste good. As you can see, I'm just using my hand again to kind of break up the curds and get that salt evenly distributed. I am using a Redmond's real salt, and it does have some darker flecks, and you're probably gonna see that on the final cheese. It's not a problem. Got everything distributed. I'm just gonna put the lid on this and let it set for about 20 minutes and soak that salty whey in. All right, so what I've done is I have taken my boiling kettle and poured it all in the sink. I took out my butter muslin, which I like more than cheesecloth, and I've let this cool up here, and I did douse this with vinegar, so everything is nice and clean. Now what I'm going to do is essentially use my cheese mold here as a colander. Got some whey draining out naturally here, and this is the point where if you didn't have a cheese press, you could likely just hang this and let this come together. The curd still is warm, and it's a nice type of curd that's not super dry, that does knit together pretty well. And while I think it's probably, if you want more of a slicing cheese, I think it's better if you have a press like this, but it's not expressly required, and you could even eat it as it is, like the crumbles. Actually, the first time I made it, my kids begged me, they're like, "Mom, can't you just leave it like that? It's just so good." It's really good when it's pressed too. Alright, so I've got my ball. It's still leaking a little bit, but that's okay. Put it in the press. Move it over here. Okay, this is actually the press. This here is the mold. And what I'm going to do is take this butter muslin and just kind of smooth it out so that I have a minimal amount of creasing in the butter muslin that could catch some of the little curds. Lay this cheesecloth over. So with that, this cheese is going to be completely encased in the butter muslin. And then I've got this follower that goes on top like that. Now I have this extra block that I think I'm going to need, because as this presses, that follower is going to sink down, and I don't want the bars of my press to touch the sides of the mold here, because that's just going to stop the pressing action, if that makes sense. I like to tuck the butter muslin in, assemble the press. I really like this press. I got it from the New England Cheesemaking Company. And then I'm going to press this at about 30 pounds of pressure, which is about right there. And what I'm noticing is the whey that is dripping out is mostly clear. The first little bits of whey might be a little bit milky. You can see it dripping down right there. It's a little bit milky, but it's not super, super white. That's okay. We like to see this kind of steady drip of whey coming out of the holes. That means that we're pressing just enough. And I'm going to leave it like this, pressing at 30 pounds for about 30 minutes. With this particular press, sometimes in the first press, I do have to babysit it a little bit, because as it presses down, it kind of relieves pressure up here on the springs, and I have to push down a little more just to make sure we're maintaining that 30 pounds. But after this initial press, I don't have to babysit it. All right, so we've been pressing for about 30 minutes. I'm gonna do the first flip. Flipping your cheese while it is pressing helps distribute the whey throughout the cheese, and it helps press it evenly. It already has come together quite a lot. This cheese is so good at coming together. Look at it. Oh, it's so pretty. And it smells super fresh. Not like sour or clabbered milk at all. And I don't know how or why. The salt might have something to do with that. I'm just gonna give her a flip. Put it back. I will press this at about 40 pounds for around an hour to an hour and a half. What I'm looking for at each press is just a little bit more steady weeping out of the whey holes over here. As you flip and press, this will slow down, but that's what we're looking for. Just a little bit more whey coming out, and it's super, super clear at this point. Oh, and make sure you've got your cheese press set so your whey catcher is actually catching whey, or you will have more cleanup to do. All right, so we're at a good 6 hours since I started the pressing process. And I have flipped it a few times. It was 30 minutes the first time, about an hour the second time, and then about every couple hours after that. And I have increased the pressure just a little bit each time. I think this last press was at 60 pounds. And at this point, it's ready to come out of the press and go straight into the regular fridge. It's good and heavy. Oh, it's so pretty. It smells lovely. What I'm gonna choose to do is cover this with plastic wrap. You could even probably air dry this for a few days and create a little bit of a rind, but it's not necessary. I'm just gonna cover this, stick it in the regular refrigerator, and by tomorrow morning, this is going to be an amazing cheese to eat. Good morning. Here's our cheese. You're gonna hear my dishwasher in the background. Working kitchen after all. But here it is. You can see that it kind of sank down a little bit. It's a little bit wider at the bottom than the top. Totally normal. I feel like this one may be a little bit less squishy than the last one I made. The last one I made actually only pressed it for about 3 hours. So this might be a little bit more dense, but I know it's gonna be good. I can't stop smelling it. Ooh, you know what I wanna do? I wanna weigh this. The last one I made was just over 7 pounds, but again, it didn't press for as long. Huh. It weighs the exact same as that other one. 7.3 pounds.
That's my
Hey, Nugget. Normally, you get about a pound of cheese per gallon of milk. And that's a cheese that you do dry the rind and age a little bit. When it dries, when the rind dries out, it does lose a little bit, but it wouldn't lose, 3 pounds. So, oh my goodness. The cheese yields have been awesome. Go. And this type of cheese does have a little bit of an open texture. These holes in here are called mechanical holes, and that's just because we pre-salted the cheese. We didn't just press it and then put it in a brine later. Looks really good. Slice is really nice. This one is better than that other one.
Do you know why?
I think because I added a little bit more salt. The last time I made this cheese, we had the kids taste testing it. Today we have the husband. You've got to back up a little bit because you're too tall. We've already gone through a quarter of the last batch that I made. It wasn't even a week ago. That one has a fuller flavor too, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can taste it. And that probably the more salt would bring that out.
It's more rich.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that good? This is so good. Honestly, like I said before, this is where I kind of wish that I had started with cheese making. Not that I haven't really enjoyed the other cheeses that I've made. I've done a cheddar, I've done Colby's, I've done like a Parmesan style, I have attempted a Swiss before. But this is such a great place to start for hard cheeses. You don't need a bunch of stuff, and you don't need the cheese cave and kind of that balancing act that comes with it's called affinage, I believe. The aging process of the cheese, you really don't have to deal with that. And that's nice, that's refreshing.
It's also just a good, simple flavor profile.
It's good basic cheese. What I'm gonna do with these is vac pack these wedges and stick them right back in my regular refrigerator. You want to use it within a couple months, but it's probably not going to last that long. I do have an entire playlist of all the things that we have made using our goat's milk so far. If you have not seen that before, I'll leave it up here for you.